This week, a respected clean energy think tank has suggested undersea power cables joining Europe and North America are viable. Solar during the day could be delivered at night to the other continent. This has disappointed the fossil fuel interests because no turtles will be coated in oil if a spill occurs.
California is set to launch a program to supply free e-bikes to low-income residents. What's the catch, you ask? Applicants will be asked to watch a series of e-bike safety and climate impact videos. I say anyone willing to sit through depressing climate change videos definitely deserves a free e-bike.
Or they could just listen to the show, maybe get a free bike too. California government, contact us. OPEC and petro-state politicians like the ones where Brian and I live like to mock the gloomy oil forecasts of the IEA and others, calling it a fantasy. Well, this year has been quite a reality check for OPEC, and they're coming to terms with oil demand peaking much earlier than they hoped. They're also disappointed less turtles will be coated in oil as electrification takes over.
New York City is considering making license plates mandatory for e-bikes due to pedestrian collisions. The only counter-proposal is to change the state motto to, "I'm walking here."
I'm walking here! I'm walking here!
All that and more on this edition of The Clean Energy Show. And also this week, Mercedes self-driving is going places. You can now legally drive down a German highway at 95 kilometers per hour and read a book or watch a movie. I'm not kidding. This is not a joke. You can actually do that in a Mercedes now. Just in Germany. GM pulls the plug on their self-driving ambitions with the autonomous ride-hailing brand Cruise. That is now defunct. How are you?
Yes, I'm great, and many more stories to come. So, quick update. Last week I mentioned that my dad was a land surveyor, and he did the land survey for the very first fiber optic communication network in the world. And it was here in Saskatchewan. It was between Regina and Yorkton, where I often go for the Yorkton Film Festival. So this was, I think, this was a bit in the early 80s. And yeah, it was the first one in the world. And my brother listens to the show, and he wanted to mention that he drew the plans for that. He used to work for my dad for a couple of years in that era.
Paul taking credit. Has to jump up and take credit just like him.
Yeah.
It's tough having a brother like that. I understand.
But yeah, I thought that was interesting, so I thought I would add that. And late breaking news.
So how old was Paul when this happened? I thought Paul would have been too young for that.
Would have been the early 80s, so he would have been maybe around 20 or something.
Is that right? What is he, 100 now? Come on.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And late breaking news, Quebec, the subsidies are starting to be reduced for an electric vehicle in Quebec. So if you're a listener in Quebec, you might want to hop on this. Basically, to the end of December is the only way to get the full rebate.
And you have to actually take possession of the car. You can't just order one. You have to go to the lot.
Yeah, it's got to be purchased and registered by December 31st and then plated by February 1st next year in order to get the full. And we're very jealous. They have excellent EV subsidies in Quebec. It's $7,000, and you can add that to the $5,000 you get from the federal government.
9 or 12 originally? Like
it was even more. And, you know, these subsidies were never meant to be in place forever. So, you know, it's a victim of its own success. The people have been really snapping it up because it was set to be reduced starting in January from $7,000 down to $4,000. So people started snapping them up in the last couple of months. And so, you know, the money is getting depleted for the program. So in January, you can probably get the $4,000 subsidy for a little while, but it looks like that's going to end. And it would have to be, if it's going to be renewed, it has to go to, you know, Parliament or whatever to renew it. But, you know, these things don't last forever. So get on it in Quebec.
Absolutely. You know, I think that this is kind of true for a lot of our listeners in North America because the Canadian government's going to change. And we know that the American government is changing, and we know that he has said that he's going to get rid of the 7,000. I don't know how fast that will happen. But if you're thinking about an electric car, if you're on the cusp, if you're on the fence, you better be thinking hard because you're going to want that $7,000 off, especially if you get a lease deal. I mean, if I was an American and I didn't really know what I was doing right now with an electric car, I would get a lease deal with something for 3 years, and it becomes, you know, pocket change, the monthly payments when they take the $7,000 off. They basically take the $7,000 off the depreciation of those 2 or 3 years, and it can turn into, as little as, so some people rented Nissan Leafs for $20 a month, but you probably don't want a Leaf for a number of reasons. Nissan's in trouble. They have a bad connector that doesn't work with anybody anymore. It's on its way out. The CHAdeMO thing is going to not be, as the NACS connector from the Tesla takes over, that's going to be the thing now. So, and it's going to be harder to charge your Leaf, which I would think, it's too bad. It's too bad because I like the Leaf, and they just didn't really keep it up, did they?
Well, let's get on with the show. California. We've talked about this e-bike program before, and it was mired in some controversy because it was very slow to get off the ground. They've been talking about it for a long time. There was some alleged mismanagement, but the program is finally opening, and it's opening tomorrow. We're recording this on Tuesday, December 17th, and the program is going to open on December 18th. So if you're listening to this right away, 5 p.m. local time, this program opens, and sounds like quite a lengthy process if you want to apply for any of our listeners in California. But you can get up to $2,000 to buy an e-bike from the government in California.
Do you buy it right from the government? Do you have to buy it from
No, I believe you provide your receipts and then they...
Because you could go on eBay and get one for $2,000 that would be pretty decent, I would imagine, in the U.S.
They have a list of approved models.
Oh, I would like to see that list.
Yes, there is a link in the article. This story is from Electrek, and they do have a link. And it said that this link of available models is probably going to be updated soon and frequently because we know e-bike models change a lot. But you do have to be low income. The cutoff is 300% of the federal poverty line, and this varies depending on how many people in your household and the overall income in your household. But
I could beat that.
They're expecting these. Pardon me?
I could beat that easily. I float around the poverty line all the time, but 3 times? Come on. Could do that. Yeah. I'm blindfolded.
Yeah. So there's an online application form. These are probably going to be snapped up very quickly. It doesn't say how much money is available. There's a similar program in Denver that we've spoken about before, and they get rid of theirs in just minutes after the new round opens for applications.
So basically, most people don't listen to the show on the first day, I bet. If they've got a week to listen to our show, and it's a busy week, the busy time of year.
Unfortunately, might be too late for most people listening to this. But I don't know. We had talked about it before, that it's been in the works for a very long time. And I wanted to make sure we mentioned that it is finally rolling.
Well, interesting. So, yeah, that's pretty easy to meet. And if you're making a good coin, you probably don't have to worry about an e-bike rebate anyway. But $2,000 is pretty generous. I mean, that's the whole bike right there. So you're getting a free e-bike. I mean,
no, it's
some
great.
People will want, a $4,000, 20-pound brand name, racing bike or something like that. But that's pretty sweet. And obviously they're trying to get people who are, poorer, not as wealthy, and maybe they have to take the bus. Maybe they don't need to take the bus. Maybe it's a long, there's examples of people who have to change buses and it's a long commute for them. Well, this is perfect for them, and this can change their life as long as the damn thing's not stolen, which is worries the heck out of me.
Yeah, I think things like locks are eligible as part of the rebate.
Well, that's nice. But yeah, this could change a person's life. And, I've seen various charity programs do YouTube videos about e-bikes and how it can change somebody's life, and they tell their life story. And we've talked about it before in the show, and it can be life-changing for some people to have an e-bike to get around on. Ember Climate is a think tank that is well-respected. We've talked about them many times on the show here. They are a growing organization, and they do good work on climate reporting and things like that. And they have come out with various studies about how things are going for the year so far. They're saying it's groundbreaking and it's unreal and it's great, but still not good enough. So that's kind of the summary. That in order to meet our climate goals, we have to do better. And gosh darn it, we can. We are certainly able to do better. So they are talking about connecting electricity grids from Europe to North America, which is a profound, profound idea. Crazy, crazy idea. It's something we've mentioned on the show before. But they're saying, and this is surprising to me, that it's really not much longer than some of the things that are already in development that we've discussed on the show. There's one going from Australia to Singapore. It hit some roadblocks recently, but it's now back up and moving forward again. There's one from Morocco to the UK and beyond, bringing solar and wind from Africa and batteries, as you mentioned recently on the show. And it's really actually not that much further, if at all, to go from, say, the eastern tip of Canada to Europe, the western tip of the UK, for example. So, yeah, that opens up all kinds of possibilities with this transatlantic interconnector. The report argues this could be a key to achieving secure, efficient, and clean energy on both sides of this ocean. The enduring impact of a 6-hour time zone difference, which is a huge, that would cost a lot of money on land to go 6 hours, 6 time zones away if it was even possible.
Yeah.
But over the ocean, it's maybe a little easier because there's no land purchases. And the only thing that I worry about is sabotage, because we've had internet cables sabotage. We've had ship anchors wrecking, internet lines and fiber optic cables and things like that. I can't believe your brother actually worked on that. That's just amazing. And then he just called it quits and retired at age 29 or something. The enduring impact of that 6-hour time zone means, Brian, as you can imagine, that it could be cloudy in one place, sunny in the other, windy, calm, night, day. It could be, 6 hours of difference, which makes a big difference.
Yeah, well, clean energy is, of course, intermittent, even throughout the day with, cloud and wind dying down. And so battery storage of many kinds is part of the solution that everybody is putting forward. Either just regular batteries or things like hydroelectric can be used as a battery. But yeah, if the entire world was connected this way, you probably wouldn't even need any batteries because there'd always be a sunny place somewhere on Earth generating power. It's just surprising to me that away across the Atlantic, it's viable, but according to Ember Climate, they think it is.
The offset from uncorrelated wind conditions and for the windiest days, a possible negative correlation as weather systems sweep across the Atlantic. What they're saying here is that a large system that is one way would be the opposite following it 6 hours away. So if you have a giant low pressure system here, it's bound to have some sunniness on the high pressure system on the other side. So the offset from uncorrelated hot and cold days and yearly rain systems would be perfect. Let's break it down. First of all, why this matters. As Europe and North America rapidly transition to renewable energy, their electricity grids are becoming more dependent on weather patterns. And we're seeing that, it's very true. And California has exceeded their energy demand with renewables and have exported it on some days, but other days they have to import it. And as we become more and more saturated with renewables, this becomes more and more important. So solar power depends on sunshine and wind energy relies on the wind. And these sources are clean and abundant, but they're also variable, as you say. And here's the kicker. What if we could offset these variations by linking the two grids, which seems incredible? But this report says it's expensive and hard, but maybe easier than nuclear. So if you're going to talk about building nuclear, why not do this? And in the long run, not right away, but over time, you would save money. This report highlights how a transatlantic interconnector could balance out the supply and demand of renewable energy, making both regions' energy systems more secure. And this is the big idea, the 6-hour time difference, of course. And with New York waking up, Europe is hitting midday solar peak. So you're getting peak solar, that may be excess solar in Europe, and it feeds the people brushing their teeth in New York City and along the eastern seaboard, and that works out really well. So likewise, when it's evening in Europe, North America's solar output is in full swing. So when they come home from work, fire up the cookie devices and the lights and the laptops and the TVs and whatever you do in Europe. Espresso machines, I imagine. So that works out very well. So by connecting to grids, we could easily share electricity in real time. This is not just one way, remember. This is going back and forth. I should have mentioned that earlier. We're talking about, excess going to the other, different, it could be one part of the day goes this way and the other part of the day goes the other way. So it's not just about solar. The report also points out that wind patterns across the Atlantic are often uncorrelated. When it's windy in Europe, it's often calm in North America and vice versa. Did not know that. Not surprised, though. The natural offset could smooth out supply fluctuations and prevent energy waste. Efficiency and security is another issue. With efficiency, one of the challenges with renewables is curtailment. So if you got too much, essentially wasting excess energy, and that makes the money you invested in it not pay off very well. So in 2023, countries like Ireland and the UK curtailed up to 8% of their renewable energy. A transatlantic interconnector could drastically reduce this waste by sending surplus power where it's needed most. And of course, they're going to have to curtail more and more the more renewables we build out. Tony Seabeck calls it superpower because we're going to be able to say, okay, you can run your industry on for this week for free because we're going to have excess solar, so you're not going to get charged for anything. So you could start building business around that. It's going to be a different system than we have now, but you could possibly, take off the Dukenflotte this time of year and go on a cruise or something and shut down your factories and then, make it run most days on sunshine. If you have to pay for electricity, you get it for free. That's pretty tempting to be more adaptable that way. And by linking the grids, we have a backup system that reduces the risk of outages and stabilizes electricity prices. But again, I worry about sabotage and just the whole vulnerability of it, because we are talking about a nuclear reactors or more worth of electricity that would be susceptible to somebody not on our lands, but so far away from us, screwing with us. So the interconnector would be a massive infrastructure undertaking with high upfront costs and complex logistics. But as the report notes, it could actually be more cost-effective than alternatives like nuclear or even hydrogen storage. The report also emphasizes the need for strong government support, both financial and regulatory, of course, because no private person is going to do this, I don't think, although some are trying. And the payoff, Brian, a cleaner, more resilient energy system that benefits millions. And at its core, the project represents a bold step towards a future where energy systems are not just national, but truly global. I would love to see that happen. Oh, get this. Okay. So the one from Morocco to the UK that they're actually planning on doing is 4,000 kilometers, okay? And the one from Australia to Singapore is 5,100 kilometers total, but 4,300 subsea. But St. John's, Newfoundland to Cork is only 3,200 kilometers, actually less far than some of the things that they're planning. So that's amazing. Of course, then you have to build a transmission system from St. John's to New York City. It's not that easy. Maybe you don't even want to go to St. John, but if you did, Bristol, Quebec is another place in Canada that's not as far east. That would be 4,800 kilometers. But Boston to Le Havre would be 5,300 kilometers, a bit, 1,000 kilometers more than the Singapore to Australia. So that might be an option because it might be cheaper, I'm guessing, than building 1,000 kilometers on land. It might be cheaper to do it undersea, but it just goes to show this is a lot more viable than I think either you or I previously thought.
Yeah, and of course, it doesn't stop anybody from doing things like nuclear, but it's the core infrastructure. And I love infrastructure. Like this could be used for decades to come with really any energy source, including stuff like nuclear.
All right, the postal strike is over, Brian, which means, well, it's not really over. It's been mandated to go back to work for a few months under the previous contract. So people are lining up probably blocks long to send their Christmas cards that aren't going to get there in time. But let's dig into the mailbag, shall we?
Okay, so Green Bastard on our Patreon page says, listen to your last episode talking about DuckDuckGo. You should also check out Firefox. It has some really cool add-ons, ad blocker, circumvent paywalls, privacy stuff. And if you want to avoid ads on YouTube, check out YouTube Revanced. and then you need micro G to be able to sign into YouTube, and then Revanced Man. I don't know what that's all about. Do we make money from ads on YouTube at all?
No, not yet.
No. Yeah. So I guess that's fine for people to use ad blockers.
Yeah. Once we have ads on our YouTube videos, we will not mention ad blockers. I don't know. We could. But anyway, yeah.
But then it also says I use the app APK Time to find out all this and more. So that's from Green Bastard on our Patreon page.
Thank you, Green Bastard. We'd love to hear from our listeners. That is our favorite thing. Please contact us by email, cleanenergyshow@gmail.com. And you can also leave us a voicemail online at speakpipe.com/cleanenergyshow. Join the conversation at our Patreon page, where Green Bastard left us that message. He also is a big supporter of our show financially. Thank you. And get access to our exclusive content not found anywhere else. We'd love to hear from you about the end of the year show that we're going to be working on in a couple of days. And that will be being put together for around New Year's. For most people, anyone who's a paid subscriber will get it as soon as it comes off the press. But for most of you, we are going to be taking some time off during the holidays because, our normal release day is Christmas Day, and then that doesn't make any sense. And so we're going to take some time off and have a year-end show in there around New Year's somewhere. If you want to listen to it at your own leisure, you can listen to it as your New Year's countdown if you want as well. We'll have a countdown maybe for that show if you want to listen to it on New Year's Eve and have a toast with us. I don't know, but we'll see. Let us know. Are you disappointed at anything of the progress, and what stories stuck out in your mind? Drop us a line, anything you want to talk about. We're always here to listen. cleanenergyshow@gmail.com. Thank you.
All right, so another e-bike story. This one is from New York City. They're looking at forcing license plates onto electric bicycles. So this is one of those stories where, it's always concerning to see any kind of a slowdown in terms of the adoption of a new technology, and electric bikes, as we talk about all the time. It's one of the best things for decarbonizing the planet. It's absolutely amazing. But so, yeah, this story is from Electrek. The issue surrounds what's known as Priscilla's Law, a bill drawn up by New York City Council member Bob Holden and named after Priscilla Lake, a woman killed after being hit by an e-bike in Chinatown last year. It went up for debate Wednesday, but its potential passage is up in the air as everybody kind of debates what to do about this. So this is not that different from a story we talked about many times about e-bike battery fires. And especially in New York City, it's been a genuine issue. People have died in fires started by e-bikes that aren't fully certified with the latest up-to-date standards. And, when we reported on that story, I was surprised at the number of people that had actually died from that. It was way more than I expected. I think, 10 or 12 people had died from e-bike fires in
and I'm guessing they're trend younger too, which makes it even more difficult to think about.
Yeah. So, this story is generally about how let's not slow down the adoption of things like electric bicycles, because it's great, especially in a place like New York City. Again, there's more deaths here involved than I would have expected. 47 lethal traffic accidents in New York City in the last 5 years from e-bikes.
Just e-bikes.
10 people a year are getting killed by e-bikes in New York City, which is way, way more than I would have expected.
Yeah, that's very, very high. And I do you think that e-bikes, the fact that they're e-bikes, has anything to do with it? I mean, are the speeds higher? Is there just more delivery drivers, last mile delivery drivers riding them?
The speeds are definitely higher. And yes, they're often maybe things like cargo bikes, which are heavier. It doesn't say how many people are killed by normal bicycles, but I assume that is also possible and a thing that happens. But of course, this ignores the main problem, which is cars. Cars are killing pedestrians at alarming rates, but because it's been going on for 100 years, we tend to accept that. So it's roughly 10 times more people get killed or injured by cars than do electric bicycles. 600 pedestrians have been seriously injured in just the first 9 months of 2024, and 61 killed by cars in the first half of 2024.
That's, if you leave your house, it's dangerous.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter if you're on a bike or if you're on your running shoes. Like that's David Byrne of the Talking Heads rides his bike around New York City. There's a few people like that. I think Colin Jost does from Saturday Night Live. Rides around Manhattan. People say you're crazy. But, there's been a lot better bike infrastructure than there used to be there. But still, it's a scary proposition once you get into traffic. And of course, they're taking the bike lanes away in Toronto, which drives all of us crazy. All right.
General Motors is giving up on its Cruise robotaxi business. The auto giant said Tuesday that it would end development at the loss-making unit, which had once been a top priority. GM said too much time and resources would be required to make Cruise a success.
Yep, GM is pulling the plug on Cruise robotaxi business. They had this high-profile accident that wasn't initiated by their cab, but was initiated by another driver in San Francisco traffic, which hit a woman and sent her into the path of the robotaxi, and the robotaxi did not see her under the car and dragged her. And that was a terrible thing, and they got shut down because they sort of hid the results from the California government and didn't report it fully, and weren't forthcoming, and then they put a pause on everything, and then now they're saying that it's just not going to happen anymore, that they're not going to do it. That there's implications here that they think that it's not going to be profitable, that it's going to be difficult. They're putting their self-driving technology into their cars for people like you and me to drive around Germany. We should go to Germany. We should go to Germany, make a podcast in a self-driving Mercedes while we go down the highway. That could be one of our podcast episodes. Maybe a bonus episode for the Patreon people. So yeah, that pedestrian was hit, pushing her into an oncoming Cruise self-driving car, which then dragged her several feet, leaving her critically injured. I'm just surprised because, you put a lot of money and effort in, and these things go on for years and years testing. And, that was just a terrible, unfortunate, weird thing that happened that wasn't necessarily the car's fault. I don't know how you have to be able to deal with something like that, but I don't know how they do that, if they have sensors under the car or what.
And Apple very famously spent billions trying to develop a electric car project, and autonomy was part of their plans. And after spending billions, they've shut that one down. So this is not an easy problem.
But in the same breath, though, Mercedes is doing very well. They've been they've just got approval from the German government, from the highway department. Mercedes-Benz has updated its conditionally automated driving system, Drive Pilot, and has now received the approval from the German Federal Motor Transport Authority. With this milestone, all is set for the upcoming sales release in early 2025. If you already have a couple of their cars, they will update it over the air. So you will, like Tesla, you'll get an over-the-air update and you have increased capabilities. So this update makes Drive Pilot the fastest certified system for conditionally automated driving. That is level 3 autonomy. And it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 would be a car that could drive anywhere without any. That's what Tesla's aiming for and says they can get to. A 4 would be a geo-restricted area, like Waymo is doing in California and other places. We'll have a new city that they're going to in the lightning round later. So, yeah, that's pretty cool. And this is just a standard production vehicle. There's no spinning LiDAR or anything on it. It's like a Tesla. It just has the cameras and probably a radar or LiDAR as well, but nothing external or weird on there. Some of the Chinese cars have big sort of clumps on their roof or at the front of the roof outside the glass, but not this one. This one is like the Mercedes S-Class and EQS, which are quite common. We even see them around here. It is optionally available for €6,000. What do you think of that price, considering you have a Tesla that you've paid money for self-driving that doesn't exist yet? But
yeah, well, if it allows you to record a podcast while driving your car down the Autobahn, that sounds pretty good. But again, it's going to be limited to those certain highways, so that price is a bit iffy, but for those who can afford it, I'm sure they'll love it. It sounds
like it's all the major highways. It's kind of like what, GM does this. They sort of map out, they do high resolution mapping of predetermined roads. And even where we live in the boonies, like almost all of our highways are now mapped for GM Super Cruises, which they call their system, but it doesn't work like this. You still see with the Super Cruise and the Ford Blue Cruise and the Tesla Autopilot, you have to keep your eyes on the road, and it will monitor your eyeballs and where they are, even through sunglasses. So when Drive Pilot is activated, it is legally allowed for the driver to enjoy other activities, such as watching TV, recording a podcast, or even streaming a movie via services like Sony's Ride View app, which they have in the car, reading the newspaper, something you like to do, Brian. Now you could do it in Germany in a Mercedes without watching the road. And perhaps, I don't know, do you read German much? Do you proficient at it? I took German in high school 4 times, 2 classes 4 times.
No, I visited Germany once, but would love to go back.
Yeah, so you can be working or simply relaxing while the car is driving itself. So, yeah, that is surprising and not getting a lot of attention when we go Tesla this, Tesla that around here a lot. But yeah, that's happening. And I've had wind of that before. So, sounds good.
All right, I want to move on to a story here from Wisconsin for several reasons. As you know, James, I visited Wisconsin recently.
Yes.
And I'm a big fan. I really like it there. But they have a giant solar project underway in Wisconsin. And this reminded me of a clip that I played on one of the bonus episodes. So this gives me a chance to play this clip from Red Letter Media. This is their Milwaukee tourism ad. This is the satirical YouTube channel that is based in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
And Mike, what says class and sophistication more than calling a drinking fountain a bubbler?
That's right, Jay. And Milwaukee's going green, too. In fact, just last year, we installed our very first solar panel. It's being used to light the open sign to the Walk Her In, Drag Her Out pub.
Is that serious?
There's a real pub named
Oh,
that, yeah.
no. Oh, no. And you wanted to go there. You should be canceled.
Yeah, I did not make it to the pub. But anyway, I just thought that was funny. You know, Milwaukee's first solar panel. But this one is a real deal, gigantic solar project in Wisconsin, 1.3 gigawatts of electricity. That's enough to power about 2,000 homes.
That is a mother of a solar farm. Holy cow.
Yeah, this will be one of the biggest in the U.S. It's going to cost $1 billion. It's going to take a couple of years to build. We often complain about things like nuclear taking a long time to build, but this one is so large that they do think it will take a couple of years to get this finished. But nevertheless, just wanted to mention it. We were going to I made my own tourism video, but Milwaukee, and we were going to put it on the Patreon page, but I think we didn't get to that. So.
Oh, we should do that. Why haven't we done that? I blame you.
We'll link that. Yeah,
You're
it's
retired,
on YouTube,
Brian. Come on.
When I went to Milwaukee, I really enjoyed myself, so we made a fun little video.
Is it on YouTube? Can you just send me the link?
Yeah, I can send you the link, and then can I edit the Patreon page? Am I an administrator?
No, we have to pay extra for that.
Oh.
No, it's one of those things where they get you. If you want a team, you have to pay the big bucks. So, yeah,
in that case,
you have to pay a monthly fee for that. So, yeah.
So I will send James the link, and he will put that Milwaukee video on the Patreon page.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I completely forgot that we were going to do that. And that'll be a public post, right? It'll be for everybody to see.
Yeah.
You don't even have to have a Patreon account. You can just go to that page and we'll have it as a public post. There are different levels of posts. There's public posts. There's if you sign up for a free Patreon account, you can see some levels of posts. And of course, if you have different levels of support for the show, you get the other content that we make for our paying subscribers to reward them. And speaking of which, that is coming up next in the lightning round. We'll be right back. It's time for the lightning round.
The lightning round is a fast-paced look at the latest headlines in climate, clean energy, and
transportation. The U.S. Supreme Court has declined to hear a challenge to California's right to set their own vehicle emission standards for CO2. Who would have thunk the U.S. Supreme Court would do something proper and decent and unevil?
No, that's exciting news. And that goes back to the 1970s when California, particularly Los Angeles, was dealing with really, really bad pollution from all of the freeways and all of the cars and all of the pollution. So way back to the 70s, California was granted the right to make their own laws about things like emissions, as long as they were as tough as the federal ones. And of course, they're generally much tougher, and other states can also follow California's rules if they want to.
Yeah, and they do. I think it's more than 10, which sometimes is as high as 13, and that accounts for half the U.S. population. So no matter what the federal idiot government is doing, sometimes the states do the right thing, sometimes cities do the right thing. The International Energy Agency is reporting that around the world, 560 gigawatts of new renewable power was installed in 2023. That is compared with just 7 gigawatts of new nuclear. So 560 compared to 7 nuclear of peak output of both of those. Solar power installations in India grew 106% year over year in 2024. And gosh, Brian, it needed to, because they're a little behind. And, there's, I heard on in the shower when I was listening to the news this morning, there's terrible air pollution in India again. And it's the time of year where people burn crops. 40% of it is coming from crops that you're not supposed to burn. And they can't stop them from burning it. I don't know why. I don't live there. I don't understand. But, if they stop that, 40% of your pollution, that is closing schools, that is making people die, literally making people die. Not a good thing.
Schools closed and people staying home from work because the pollution is so bad in some places right now in India.
Chinese autonomous driving company WeRide, that's kind of like the Waymo of China, some people describe it, deploys non-autonomous street sweepers in China throughout the country. Are they big Roombas? No, they look like a street sweeper that just drives itself. I think that's a great idea. Until they sweep up a child. God, don't let that happen.
Yeah. Or a little dog, I can imagine, might get swept up.
Now you're getting more realistic. That seems more plausible. Hopefully that... Okay, hopefully that never happens. And I assume that there will be, autonomous street sweepers, and then there'll be driven ones that come and clean up the parts that those don't. Either that or they are like a Roomba and they bounce from curb to curb, sweeping up, squirrels and cats and dogs. Well, it's time for a CS Fast Fact. Battery pack prices were lowest in China at just $94 per kilowatt hour. This is not batteries. This is battery pack prices, which is more. Now, while the U.S. and Europe prices were actually 31% and 48% higher than China due to market immaturity, higher costs, and lower volumes of sales, the gap was wider than in previous years, and that implies that the price drop was more accentuated in China. So the prices are going down in China quickly, and hopefully that makes its way outside China.
Yes, it's all because of volume. They are going full steam ahead for electric vehicles in China.
Solar and wind take 10 years to get 5% deployment in countries, or jurisdictions, however you want to look at it, and 10 more years to get to 25%, and then 10 years to reach 50% after that. EVs take 6 years to get to 5% of sales, and 6 more years to get to 50%. We talk about the rapid advancement of solar. Well, EVs are fully capable of going even faster on that S-curve going up. EV battery life expectancy could be 40% higher than previously estimated. This is from electricdrives.tv. The link should be in your show notes. A study says that only 1% of EV buyers would go back to gas-powered cars. Why? Low costs are the number one reason, Brian. The cost of operating a EV is very seductive. To pay $7 a tank, $9 a tank, and environmental factors are at play, but not as high as the cost. So there you go. I mean, that I've said before in the show, it's been my dream to own an EV, but the cost is what got me into an EV. Is the savings. That's what did it.
No, and where we live, people are constantly filling up their gigantic pickup trucks, and it's costing $150, $200 at the pump. It's crazy.
It's
and then
insane.
Once you don't have to do that anymore, you just feel silly that you ever did.
You know, one of these days, I'm going to have to go fill a gas car, and I'm not going to know how to do it. Like, it's years will have passed, and I won't be able to do it. I'll be, renting a car somewhere or some situation, and it's just going to be like, I'm just going to stare at the pump like a complete moron. BYD's BEV platform, battery electric vehicle platform, next year apparently plans to come out with a 6C charging platform that will allow 10% to 80% charge in 7 minutes for some models. 7 minutes. That, speaking of standing at a gas pump, is about the same practically as filling up your car.
Yeah. EV charging is getting faster, although, the charging right now is generally pretty adequate, but it's just going to get better from here.
I have trouble explaining 6C charging because 1C is supposed to be normal charging. But what's normal? I mean, my car, I think, is less than 1C. I think it's half of that. So this is 6 times that. And why is it 10 to 80% for newbies to the show? Well, usually maybe you don't want to go below 10% when you're on the highway, just to not have range anxiety. I go down to 6% because I have an accurate thing that tells me that. And 80% is where the battery slows down when you're charging. And most batteries slow down around 80%, so you don't bother going beyond 80% because it could take as long to go from 80 to 100% as it does from 10 to 80%. But 7 minutes, man, you know what I would spend an hour and 7 minutes. So that would be crazy. You couldn't go pee. You couldn't go pee and get a drink and stretch your, unbunch your underwear in that time. It would just be too fast. So, I think in a world where that happens and you can pay less for slower charging, you're bound to just say, I'm going to go have a bite to eat. Even if I rush it and it's 25 minutes or something, I'm going to take the lower one and spend maybe half as much charging. So Waymo is going to a new city, Brian. They're going to Miami. Not a snow-covered city. The odd hurricane, the odd Miami Vice. But yeah, Clean Technica has that story. So Waymo is expanding. They're going, I think, to the northeast somewhere as well, at least for tests, maybe not for public drives just yet. So Stats Canada, this is the Canadian zero emission vehicle sales for the third quarter of 2024. We're now just under 16%, 15.7% of new car sales in Canada. That's not bad. That includes plug-in hybrids that have a plug so that it acts like an EV for a certain amount of kilometers, say 60, 80, 100 kilometers. That's a 27% increase compared to Q3 in the previous year. So those are the increases that we were seeing during COVID. And we were saying, well, isn't that great? It's so fast. And then it was like, oh, they're going to be down to 13, 18%. And then there was a lot of ink spilled on that. And it's just not true. Even in Canada, it's increasing 27% year over year, which is healthy and good. 74% of those cars that we mentioned there were full battery electric vehicles, and 26% of them were hybrids with a plug. Now, a lot of parts of the world are seeing a increase in hybrids with plug-in hybrids because we're beyond the early adopter stage now. People are just kind of worried about range and things like that, and they don't want to think about it, so they're getting plug-in. They want to do something, but they just can't pull the plug on a battery electric vehicle, it seems. November EV sales in Norway, that is the country that is leading the way and will ban new combustion sales of light-duty vehicles next year, is now 94.9%. Just one little tick short of 95%. It was probably one guy who was on the fence and didn't go out and buy one, and it caused that 0.9% short of 95%. So 5% of vehicles had gas, but just 5%. That is pretty incredible. And hopefully, we'll see how that goes next year. The world is not collapsing, Brian. Norway continues to exist with banning combustion vehicles.
And as you said, only 1% of EV buyers are interested in going back to a gas car. So there isn't some kind of big revolt in Norway. They have embraced electric vehicles and they do not want to go back.
Chinese companies are responsible for 76% of global EV sales. That is from Clean Technica. So yeah, without China, we hate to rely on China, but we're having to, and it's working so far. A new study concludes that carbon pricing, that is what we have in Canada. It's very controversial now with the cost of living going up due to inflation, that everyone's blaming the carbon tax for everything. Well, a new study concludes that it only contributed 0.5% increase in prices since 2019. 0.5%. A period of time, Brian, in which overall prices went up 19%. And of course, all the right-wing parties blame it on that carbon tax. And of course, people buy it because they're too busy to actually learn anything or listen to our show.
Yeah, big increase in, 19% since 2019. Prices have genuinely gone up. Things really do cost more.
Groceries cost that much more too. It's quite a bit.
0.5% of that is the carbon tax. So, yeah.
And finally this week, OPEC, which projected a growth surge twice as big at more than 2 million barrels a day in anticipation of continued gains in China, the organization stuck to its guns for most of this year, even as the country's economy sputtered in China and people bought EVs. But now the oil cartel is gradually conceding defeat over 5 consecutive monthly downgrades in their forecasts. The group, their secretariat in Vienna, has slashed demand estimates by 27%, with its outlook this week making the biggest cutback so far as we near the end of the year. And the organization's view is now closer to that of who the IEA, which was ridiculed by Alberta, Saskatchewan, Canada's premiers, and many other people in the world, especially OPEC themselves and oil companies, were laughing, say, people aren't going to drive Teslas in India. They're not going to buy EVs only in China. Well, wrong. This is the OPEC leader from Saudi Arabia once accused the IEA of making la-la land projections. Well, not true. Just like our neighbor next door, Daniel Smith, Premier of Alberta, said the same thing. With OPEC's decision this month to once again delay the restart of halted output, members showed how little faith they place in the Secretariat's bullish estimates. So, OPEC isn't listening to their own projections. They're cutting back output because they want to keep prices higher. So China's largest energy producer said the country's oil demand may peak in 2025. When's 2025, Brian? According to my calendar, days away.
2 weeks away.
5 years earlier than expected. As the shift away from gasoline and diesel accelerates, that bolsters the IEA's view that global consumption could stop growing this decade. And that story is on Bloomberg.
And that is a great way to end the show for the week. You can contact us, cleanenergyshow@gmail.com, around social media. We're Clean Energy Pod, and you can join the Patreon for free to get special posts, some of which are fully public, some of which are on the paid tiers. And there's also the merch store that's listed in the show notes or on our website. And please, if you have time, rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or whatever your favorite podcast app is. And make sure to hit the follow button if you are following us or not following us.
So join us on our Patreon page today. What's Patreon? It's a place where you can support creators by paying a monthly fee and getting stuff in return. We thank all of our Patreon members, including Green Bastard, who we heard from earlier, Ryder, who are both in the Clean Club executive level, and the Clean Club Plus members, Bob Armstrong and Wes S., and Clean Club members Andy Fessler, Sean Hines, Timo Kellenberger, Peter D. O'Donnell, and all of our supporter level members, and all of our Apple Podcast subscription supporters as well. You can also even become a membership holder on our YouTube channel. And we'll see you again. I don't know, not 7 days, but, well, Depends who you are. If you're one of our supporters, you get the podcast earlier, but most of you will hear from us before the end of the year, and then we'll have another week off.
Yeah, see you on the next very special episode of the Clean Energy Show.
Join the Clean Energy Show's Clean Club with a YouTube channel membership or on Patreon and support our weekly climate programming. Get early access to all our videos and podcasts, as well as members-only bonus content, Discord server access, and a monthly bonus podcast from Brian and James. The Clean Energy Show is released every week wherever you get audio, as well as YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram.